keyboard to the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, prophet of esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the book of esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the prophet and William as the professor.
You may call me the prophet, but in my life outside of the business of esports, I have worked on the investment side of the table for the better part of the last 2 decades. The single fastest growing area of gaming and esports is gambling. It's booming right now. You don't need to be a prophet like me to see that. However, as an investor, I've stayed away from gambling and betting companies because of the reputational risk and often shady nature of the companies involved. This was true until now. I've recently bought stock in a new public company called Esports Entertainment Group, or EEG, which is focused on esports and gambling. The big difference that changed my mind is that EEG is a public company, NASDAQ listed, and fully regulated, focused on esports betting. The regulatory and audit requirements of a public company are key in my mind to provide the needed transparency for players, bettors, and investors. I had an opportunity to host the CEO of EEG on this podcast a couple of months ago, and I was very impressed by his vision for the company. We've stayed in touch, and I'm delighted to announce that they've accepted to become a sponsor of the podcast. If you're a family office, institutional investor, or investor of any kind, really, Esports Entertainment Group, ticker symbol GAMBLE, GMBL, might be one of the best ways to get exposure to the esports betting space and gaming in general. Make sure to check them out at esportsentertainmentgroup.com. Having said that, I need to make sure to state that this is only my opinion. I'm not an investment advisor or selling stock in the company. Please make sure you do your own research and seek advice from a licensed professional if you're looking to invest in the field. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, William Collis. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for telling your friends and colleagues about the podcast. Thank you for all the love and support, the 5-star ratings and reviews. We survive on those things, guys, and so we really appreciate it. If you haven't left a 5-star rating or review, please do so. If you haven't told your friends about the podcast, please do so. And it's an easy recommendation. It's giving a free gift, William, right? It's like it's the gift that keeps on giving week after week, and it costs you nothing.
Yeah, just think about where your life was before you'd listen to this podcast and how much better it got. And think of giving that to, no, I'm kidding. I mean, we're not that special, but we're pretty special. But the point is, if you enjoy listening to this, chances are your friends would enjoy listening to it too. Make sure to tell them. We have fun here, and we like to have fun with more people. So
I will say, I'm going to take it one step further. I will say, not only are we the best esports podcast by far, not only are we the only really legitimate business esports podcast, but we may be one of the best podcasts ever, William. That's just my opinion. I will let the listeners decide, but that's my view.
I did see a podcast power rankings that had Serial at number 1 and Business of Esports at 2. So,
I don't argue with those things.
I don't know who posted that on Reddit. Maybe it was me. I'm not saying. But
but you had a big week.
I always have a big week right now. I feel like I'm crushed. But
you're making news every week, my friend.
I did. I'm in the news a lot lately, but I did have possibly the proudest moment of my esports career. And I can't hide it. My pro team, Oxygen OXG, crept up to the #1 ranked Heroes of the Storm team in the world. I can't
Wow.
believe we did it. I can't believe we did it. It is for me, it is the greatest joy to be a co-owner of a team in a game that I really love. Like it's just it's just such a moment of pride. It's total vanity, but it's such a moment of pride. I'm just like, yes, the very good at Heroes of the Storm.
I will give you one of these for that, William. This does look. Heroes of the Storm, your first love, I would say. Maybe you love it even more than your kids at this point. You know, who knows?
That's hard to say, but it is. I was thinking about it. Like, Heroes of the Storm is a major reason of, you can make fun of me, guys, for all you want about this, but it is a major reason for why I'm so involved in esports today, because I like that game so much. And I know I'm probably a little bit on an island in terms of, my strong feelings for it versus the esports zeitgeist. I see the Twitch viewership charts, I know where things rank, but I do think it's a fantastic game. And it doesn't, it goes to say, it doesn't matter what brings you into esports. It's a special community once you're there. And this game is really a big reason why I'm in esports. It's a big reason of why I met you, Paul. It's funny how fate works, but here we are. And I still love it and play it to this day. So, it's great to be doing well in it. And
well, congrats to you and Oxygen Esports. It's been a running joke that every single podcast episode you have to get in some Heroes of the Storm reference. And every single time I sort of roll my eyes and it's some dad joke or something like that. This is legitimate Heroes of the Storm news. This is the first time I will allow it. And it gets one of these, it gets a round of applause.
#1 in the CCL, baby. We did it. We did it. We
Well,
started as #5, by the way. We actually climbed the rankings. We started low down. But
I will say the only thing left is for you to be on the roster, really.
Well, Paul, let's put it this way. There is an injury substitute, and I am like literally waiting in the wings. I'm like, everyone feeling healthy today? There's a global pandemic. Is everyone feeling healthy? Does anyone need me to? Anyone? And they're like, well, we have an alternate. And I'm like, but sometimes the alternates also don't. So one day,
there is some universe where William is spiking his players like beverages or, putting slippery things on the floor.
Like throwing down banana peels.
Well, an injury.
Yeah. Oh, guys, I don't know who else is going to do this. I mean, it's not like there's not thousands of other people who are significantly higher ranked in ladder than me. Oh, I better step in.
No, the injury has to be so last minute that it can only be you, right? Like literally, they have to be sitting down ready to play when the injury happens. That's the only way to actually do this.
You're really scheming, Paul. You've thought this through, and you're like,
I'm not like I'm saying I haven't thought it through for other games.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're always the one away. You're like, it's our black swan moment or whatever. No. But maybe one day, Paul, let me put it this way. I didn't think the game would have an esports comeback, let alone, having a team that's competing in it. So, anything's possible. I've been grinding Muradin. Maybe the time is now,
Anything is possible. Let's jump in to some other news, less important than Oxygen being #1 in Heroes of the Storm, but equally important, or at least important enough to make it into our podcast, right? I think that's fair to say.
Important enough to belong.
Important enough to belong. Let's kick off this podcast, William, with PUBG Mobile. And everyone knows how big a fan I am of mobile esports. But this was big news. I said that with a very straight face. If you're watching the video, you have proof.
You were so like laissez-faire. You're just like, literally, like I would have believed you if this was my first time listening to the podcast and been like, oh yeah, Paul must be a huge fan. You were really straight
convincing, hey?
On that one, yeah.
Yeah. So let me bring this up here. This is from esportsnetwork.com. The headline is PUBG Mobile announces $14 million esports program in 2021. The article goes on to say that they've announced their PUBG Mobile Global Championships, the newest program, boasts a grand prize pool of 14 million, making it the biggest competitive series run in mobile esports history. This is a huge prize pool for mobile, I will say. Something we've never seen before. The article goes on to give some details into sort of the structure and things like that. But just to give you a sense, mobile esports, according to Newzoo, has generated $950 million globally. So, this is one of these things where PUBG Mobile is taking a leadership role in the mobile esports space. William, first of all, are you guys involved there at all? And second of all, like, what do you make of now we're starting to see mobile esports prize pools rival, call it traditional esports prize pools?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I just want to put that figure in context, right? Because we are stunned that, the Dota Invitational gets above 30 million in prizing, right? Like absolutely stunned, right? So that is, I think, arguably, everybody looks at Dota and says, well, that's the pinnacle of esports, right? In terms of, your payday, right?
In terms of prize pool, for sure.
In terms of prize pool. Yeah, in terms of prize pool. This is basically half of that. Right. So, and if you were going to rank esports payouts, I believe this puts them as number 4 overall for potential payout structure, like in terms of highest prizing ever. So it's huge. Like, and for a mobile game, right? Again, this isn't for like a, bread and butter PC esports title for mobile. This is just, I mean, it's so significant. And I think it highlights what I am coming around to, which I think is maybe difficult for you to swallow, Paul, but it's that mobile is so accessible and it's so ubiquitous. The audience, that there's just such a built-in audience there. And for many people in many countries, right, the phone is the primary gaming device. And those consumers want esports just as badly and want competition just as badly. And so the reality is it is a big white space for games to lean into. And I think PUBG Mobile, it's a little bit, I almost ironic in my book, because I wrote in my book about how I felt like PUBG missed the big opportunity, right? Like they didn't defend well against Fortnite. They made poor decisions as a result. They kind of ceded the traditional market. But this is a really strong example of that brand reinventing itself to a leadership position. And actually, it's kind of funny if you look at where Fortnite is today and you look at where PUBG is today. Fortnite is struggling because of its absence in mobile, right? Yeah. Fortnite is booming. It really underscores the critical value of being on a 3x6 inch piece of computing hardware in people's pockets, right? And so I have to even say this is one where I'm putting my money where my mouth is, right? Like I've Oxygen Esports has announced, I think we were in the Esports Observer this week we signed a former Fnatic player out of India for PUBG Mobile, to help us, look at that ecosystem and do more there. And, I think it's part of a bigger belief in Oxygen that mobile has potential, but it's also part of, I think, a bigger global awakening, which, I'm being a part of, which is like mobile is happening in esports, whether, we can be hardcore keyboard and mouse, no aim assist all we want. But the reality is it's a really important way people game today, and it deserves to have a competitive scene,
Yeah, I've reached acceptance on it's the way people game front, right? Like I've accepted that, and especially in, call it, developing economies like India, right, where you have a much smaller portion of the population that has $500 consoles or $2,000 PCs, where their mobile device is their primary form of entertainment. I totally get it, right? I think the stake in the ground that I will stand by is mobile esports are not long-term sustainable. You can prop them up with big prize pools, but fundamentally long-term, I don't think anyone's going to care to watch 16 guys thumbing around on their phones, right? Like it's just not an exciting experience. It's really not.
This is what's changed for me a little bit, right? Like, and I hate to do this, Paul, because I love you so much, but like, don't you think what you just said was how people were talking about StarCraft back in 2000, 2004, right?
No.
And like, I just don't think people are going to want to see a bunch of, nerds, with their keyboard and mouse tapping away
Yes.
on a screen, like
I'll give you that.
yeah,
I'll give
yeah,
you that.
yeah.
But here's the difference. How
Okay,
did we
go for it.
defend ourselves? How did we defend ourselves against that? Because the industry has gone through that period where people look at StarCraft and go, what are these guys just with their mouse and keyboard, right? What was our defense as an industry to those comments?
I mean, a lot of things, but you seem to have.
What was the primary defense? The primary defense was, no, these are real athletes training thousands of hours, building real skills, right? This is a real sport because these are real athletes that have to have dexterity, real mechanical skill that takes thousands and thousands of hours to build, right?
Yep.
That's the defense. So, but the same doesn't apply to mobile. We all know the skill cap with mobile is way lower.
But this is where I have to fight back against this, and it's like, and believe me, Paul, part of me is sympathetic to you in the sense that I think, like you, I grew up, a PC gamer, right? Like I have such an intuitive understanding of the skill that is required to, like, hit WASD, and your number keys to hot swap weapons. Like, I get it, right? And to be honest, I wasn't part of a mobile generation, right? Like, mobile phones really came into being, like true mobile, smartphones were really more, when I was even in business school, right? They were building in popularity and everything. And so, I miss that a little bit, but I sometimes think it's a generational gap piece because, look, here's an example. I think Hearthstone requires true skill to play. It is really, yes, there's RNG factors and things, but like the really good Hearthstone players like crush you 9 times out of 10. They're insane, right? That's a mobile title. And on many of the big Hearthstone tournaments I attended, even some of the pros would play on their tablets sometime because it was easier for production values on stage. Like, I remember being at an event where Blizzard had provided tablets to people because it was decluttering for the experience. So,
yeah, but you picked an esport that's more like chess than Call of Duty, right? That's more a mind thing than a dexterity and sort of.
I totally hear you, but the argument I'm making is, okay, so you'd be willing to say if chess was played on a phone, it's not less skill intensive. So there's not a problem with the phone. There's a problem. You're arguing there's a problem with the medium, that maybe that particular medium,
the match between genre and medium there's misalignment here, right? If you're telling me we're going to have a chess tournament, right, and all the great players are going to be there, but instead of having a chessboard, they're all going to play on their phones, that's still going to be an exciting chess tournament.
It is
the same way awesome. Hearthstone is still an exciting chess tournament. But to say we're going to go play PUBG on our phones, now you go, wait a second. This is a game about aiming. This is a game about, shooting the other guy.
Yeah, but
movement, looting, aiming, right? Like, and there's a part of strategy in there, but you're still talking about a game that's fundamentally built on a foundation of requiring mechanical skill.
But let me walk you back on this slippery slope here a little bit. I want to make my argument. So, okay, so you're basically saying, so your premise is, I get that you can have esports on a mobile device. It's just you can't have like aiming intensive or manually dexterity intensive esports, right? Is that sort of the argument there, that there's a category of skill that doesn't port to mobile well? Right?
Correct.
So my response to that is sort of twofold. One is, like, it's a problem that can be solved. You know what I mean? Like, and I would argue in many of these games today, they are being solved. I was surprised playing these mobile games how actually fun it is to aim and shoot, right? Like, yes, it's not as intensive as pixel perfect clicking on, on a PC with mouse, but there's a different sort of strategy where positioning and sight lines matter more. And also, so partly it's like, I think it's a premise about the device, but also even if your premise is true, that doesn't mean things can't change and evolve to get there. But the bigger argument I would make is, do you then think that you can't have esports on a console because they use a controller?
Correct.
See, I
don't think Call of Duty League should be on controller. I think that should not be allowed.
See,
because then you don't get the best players in the world. And this was my whole aim assist argument last week.
I know, I know, and I kind of want to take us there in some ways because it's such a good argument. But I really think that in many sports, people intend like what determines the nature of a sport is the level playing field, right? Like that's what really does it in my mind, right?
But the
Like the
top sports also remove all the training wheels.
but that's not true. Like is lightweight boxing not real boxing because you're not a heavyweight?
No, but it's like saying boxing. You don't have people wearing headgear and giant sort of padded things so that they don't hurt each other. Like my point is,
So
they take
is
out all the training wheels out of real sports. When you play baseball, you don't have the ball teed up for you, right? If you play football, my point is like gaming is unique in that some variations of the game have training wheels. And to me, yes, it's great if everyone has the same training wheels, but it just cheapens the whole
But
thing.
it's not training wheels. It's choosing an equipment set that is a common and ubiquitous equipment set to allow as many people as possible to compete. And does that mean that some types of skill like aiming are maybe a little bit less important, but other types of skills like sight lines and coordination are maybe a little bit more important? Yeah, but that's a natural progression of adjusting your medium, just like lightweight boxing is different than heavyweight boxing, right? And I don't think just because the lightweight boxers like didn't bulk up to the maximum weight value possible, I don't think they're any less athletic or any less successful in their achievements, right? And there are plenty of sports too where we ban high performing equipment. Look at running. There's a lot of bans on high performance running shoes because the argument is they're too good. They
Yeah, but you're
create too
proving my
much
point.
imbalance. Mhm.
This is why aim assist can't exist. Those are training wheels which running has banned.
The point I'm making is a little bit different. I'm saying running has not said like the objective of running is not to get the absolute humanly fastest possible time. So the objective of running is to create a level playing field that many people can participate in that honors the sport, that honors the sportsmanship of racing, right? And I think
get it.
I think mobile does that. I think I've really am coming around to mobile in a big way. And I think partly it's I had my own preconceived baggage about, what could and couldn't be done on a mobile phone. And I really think there's been a massive amount of innovation in aiming and control. Like I really do. I think I was carrying, opinions from 2016 into 2020, and no surprise, like the space moves forward, clever designers come up with clever solutions. But also, I think it's what I said. It's at the end of the day, I think one of the most important things about sports is accessibility. Is that, and this actually framework from Book of Esports, useful in real life, right? The most number of people can play, because that's what really matters. That's how people come to appreciate skill and strategy. That's how people become involved in the passion of improving. And that's how people ultimately aspire and reward high level play with fandom and eyeballs and all of those things. So I think accessibility is key. And mobile is just so accessible today. It's opening up a new frontier. And I think people who can only game on a phone or prefer to game on a phone should have the rights to esports. Like I don't think esports should be in some ivory tower that requires a $5,500, like hardcore gaming. Like I think as many people should discover gaming as possible. And I think it's important that mobile gaming is doing that and doing it in a way that's really, again, a lot more fun. Like I had not realized how fun some of these mobile shooters are. Like again, I had been coming back from this circa 2014 when the drowning was the state of the art aiming mechanism for for mobile gaming, right? Like I'm in my head, the peak of mobile gaming was still Infinity Blade, where I'm slashing and it's like the space has moved on a lot from in a really significant way. And I think it's fair to say, just as I think the leap from Nintendo to SNES really in a very short period of time, you got a whole birth of gaming innovation. I think mobile's at a similar point where we're having in a very short period of time the tools of game design really evolving for the medium in a way to make more competitive experiences like this possible. So sorry, that was a big soapbox to get on, but it's a tough journey for me because I'm still I'm so inherently biased to PC first, but I'm getting there.
I think that's the wrong assumption you're making about me, William. And I think you're confusing two things. You're confusing esports and gaming. Two different things.
Okay.
The accessibility is great for getting millions of people playing PUBG Mobile. No question. And mobile will always be successful in that way because
Yep.
it's accessible. You will always have millions of gamers. Okay, but we can't confuse this with entertainment, the entertainment medium, which is esports, right? Which is, I'm going to put a big event on. I'm going to broadcast this to the world. People are going to watch this, pay for this form of entertainment. To me, mobile esports will never be that. Will never. It can't. Right? For the same reason why you have millions of people around the world who love playing softball. Love it. Right? It's a more accessible game. You pitch underhand. It's a bit slower. The ball's bigger. Right?
I do like softball. Yes, you're
but
right.
No one's going to go and suggest we start Major League Softball, right? And spend millions of dollars and field teams and put it on TV. No one's going to watch professional softball.
But I think that's a fallacy by example, because essentially what you're arguing is, if it's not the absolute best
what I'm saying, the purpose of sport is to tease out even the smallest skill differences between players. This is why you compete, right? So that even the tiniest skill difference makes a difference. This is why people love golf, right? Like, the difference between the greatest player in the world and no one you've ever heard of is like one shot, right? Like, and great sports tease out those differences. Mobile can never do that. Mobile can never create that entertainment experience. It will have short-term success. Mark my word. This is a transitory trend where there's a lot of dollars being thrown at it because people get excited about something new, right? And it's very cheap, as you know, to field mobile players. So everyone's like, well, we'll roll the dice on this, right? But the reality is, 20 years from now, no one's going to be watching mobile esports. Not a soul. Well,
I understand the argument you're making, and I appreciate.
They'll be playing mobile games, not watching mobile esports. That I just want to make that clear. I'm very bullish on mobile gaming. I'm extremely bearish on mobile esports as entertainment.
But I struggle with this so much, because then if you go to YouTube and look at like stored content libraries for games, right? Mobile games and mobile creators consistently score in the highest top categories of YouTube. So you'll concede that you'll concede that mobile could produce entertainment, at least as a creator-driven product, like a personality-driven product, right?
For the moment, it's having its moment in the sun. It's like, if I invented softball today, everyone would be like, "Oh my god, this is so new! This is so cool! Let's make videos. Let's watch videos." Right? Like, but it's like, after 10 years of softball videos, you'd be like, "Okay, I'm tired of softball. Like, I get it. Big ball,
But would you see, this is my big belief, Paul, is I don't think we are fans of sports, and this is a bold statement, but I'm going to put it out there. By the way, I don't want this comment to come across as me conceding that mobile esports are somehow lesser than, like, that's going to be a subtext here, but I don't want to concede that point, but I want to make my argument, right? Like, I think the world of sports is not the best sport wins, right? I don't think it's a sense of like, okay, like, there were all these different types of games and one was just more fun than the other, and so we converged on this one, type of play. Because if that were true, why would, like, cricket not knock out baseball, or baseball knock out cricket, right? I think what really happens in sports is that you achieve a level of ubiquity and market presence where the activity can generate enough fans, generate enough viewership, and generate enough media value that it becomes a self-sustaining, enterprise, right? And at that point, the sport takes on a life of its own, because it can sustain careers and investment and all the things that drive the NFL or the LCS to be what it is today, right? And I don't see why you can't have that in esports. Like, it might be true that it's harder to do mobile production value, but and I hate to be the guy who's like Clay Christensen, disruptive innovation, but it's useful here. Like, it is useful to understand, like, if you think the biggest problem with mobile esports is maybe they're not so fun to watch, I think people can solve that. If you think the biggest problem with mobile esports is there's not enough reward for manual dexterity. I think people can solve that. I really do. I really do.
We
Because
haven't
I
even
look at,
solved it for traditional esports, William.
well, I mean,
They're not going to solve it for mobile.
maybe this is why I'm the eternal optimist, but I'm looking at my keyboard right now, and I'm thinking about Heroes of the Storm or League of Legends or MOBAs, and I'm like, it's 4 buttons: your Q, W, E, and R. Like, how is that so hard to play? Why should, Faker and these top pros, maybe it's 6 buttons if you count 1, 2, and D, right? For your like alternate abilities. And yet those 6 buttons drive, arguably, I think, at least in Dota, let's use that, the most skill intensive esport in the world. I think Dota is the most skill intensive esport in the world today, and it's 6 buttons.
But it's because there's a data on the screen and information on the screen to fill 25 inches versus what you can put on a 6-inch screen. So it's not just the input method. You've increased the complexity massively just by increasing the size of the screen you're playing on.
So does that mean Go is a bad game because it can be played on a 64 by 64?
I told you screen? Go would be fine because it's all brains. There's no mechanical skill. That's fine as a mobile esport.
But my point with Dota was specifically about mechanical skill. Is if you look at the underlying mechanics of Dota, it doesn't look that hard.
That's misleading, right? The guy doing 218 actions per minute is going to kill the guy doing 215 actions per minute every single time. He's going to get more creep, more gold, his power. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the reality is the beauty of those highly mechanical skill esports is they tease out the most minute differences.
But why couldn't the same thing happen in mobile? Why couldn't I design a mobile game that requires 250 APM?
Because you're limited by screen size and input method. The format, the medium limits what you can do. Look, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm curious what our listeners think. Yeah. Are you team Prophet? Are you team Professor on this one? As the Prophet, I think no question I'm right in the long term. No one's going to be watching mobile esports, William. Let's be honest. A lot of people playing it, and everyone's going to toy with it now. And $14 million from PUBG is going to prop up a lot of mobile esports excitement, no question. Just like Fortnite esports, which I was right about, came and went. As soon as the money dried up, no one cared.
You were right about Fortnite esports. I will.
You know how much flack I got for that, saying Fortnite esports was not a thing. Anyways, let's move on. Okay, let's talk about another game here. Let's talk about Roblox, because Roblox in the news. Big business announcement here. This is from CNBC.com. The headline is gaming company Roblox files IPO prospectus after 91% jump in revenue. The key points here: Roblox said third quarter revenue climbed 91% to $242 million. The company's net loss more than doubled to $48 million. This prospectus, this IPO prospectus, hit investors' hands 2 months after Unity went public. But according to CNBC here, Roblox is growing bigger and faster. I will say, I read in another article that they're looking to raise $1 billion in the IPO, William. Look, we're seeing the 2020 is, interestingly enough, it truly is in some ways the year of gaming, right? Like, it's unfortunate that it gets overshadowed by the pandemic and all those things, like all the terrible news of 2020.
The numbers are insane for this.
But the numbers are insane here, right? Yeah. Like, are you just, let's start with the comparison CNBC made. Are you more excited about the Roblox IPO than you were Unity IPO?
It's such an interesting question, because I actually think they're very similar. Like, I think some people think of Unity as a platform IPO and Roblox as a game IPO. Roblox is a platform just like Unity. It's just in where you draw the line in terms of how, like, flexibility versus difficulty for coding, right? Like, Roblox has chosen to go on much narrower in scope, but much easier to do. Unity's chosen to go much harder to code, but they're both platforms, so they're really comparable to each other. In some sense, this is a bold thing to say. I think the Roblox IPO is more interesting because it really points to an opportunity of democratizing creation of games in a way that we haven't really seen before in in history. Like, we're still not there with coding. Like, I remember when I was learning to code C++, and there were all these gamified coding experiences, and like they just never worked, right? Like, Roblox is arguably, and it's not coding, but it's arguably, or it can be, but in general, but it's arguably found the right balance and mixture between building blocks and constituent elements and custom creation. I put it in the same camp as Minecraft, of kind of getting this zeitgeist balancing act, right? um and I think it's exciting because it points to the potential for other types of creator driven businesses to succeed in the future in other industries, not just gaming. So I think I'm arguably more excited about Roblox, which is crazy to say.
In some ways, I thought Fortnite would get here before Roblox did. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
Fortnite had the potential to be kind of this open platform where anyone could create experiences, and they do to a certain extent, but they don't monetize it. They don't, you know what I mean? Like there's a piece missing from that Fortnite component that Roblox seems to have really hit on. And I opened their S1. I just want to show you some of the big numbers here.
Blow me away.
So their S1 is the file they're filing, right, for the IPO with the SEC. And let me just open this up here. 31.1 million daily active users, 22 billion hours engaged, 589 million in revenue, on 1.2 billion of bookings, and $345 million in operating cash flow. So, I mean, massive numbers, right? And we're talking about growth that is unparalleled. We didn't see it from Unity, you didn't see it from Fortnite, you didn't see it from any of these players, right? Why do you think, William, in some ways, I would argue Roblox has flown more under the radar than some of their sort of, contemporaries?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, why do you think that is?
Well, because it targeted a much younger user, I think, and so there's a little bit of a tendency to dismiss things that age is certain, like just don't rise to the popular. I think Fortnite was a sweet spot where it was its target user base was very much socially savvy and heavy social media adopters. So it really got a bigger mind share of the conversation than, say, 8-year-olds who probably didn't have a Facebook account playing Roblox, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it. I think Fortnite did more to inject itself into the zeitgeist with like Star Wars crossovers and like it actively wanted to participate in that conversation. Whereas I think Roblox, I suspect you're going to see a lot more of them doing that going forward, but it wasn't really part of their strategy. Because I think it fundamentally comes down to, I think Roblox was a creator-driven business. So they were very focused on rewarding their creators and giving and incenting creators to do more on the platform, right? And that's a very what I would say myopic. It's a very myopic worldview, right? It doesn't require you to shout extra loud to a lot of people. Whereas Fortnite was much more a player-focused experience, right? Like it fundamentally hinged on needing to get as many people in the pipe. And I'm vastly oversimplifying here, but I think that's the third reason why Roblox flew under the radar.
But this is kind of
under
the beauty
the radar.
of
It wasn't under the radar.
No, it's not. Yeah, I'm saying
less,
comparatively speaking, right? Not obviously not under the
it's
radar.
not like we're like, what's Roblox? Let's Google it.
No, comparatively speaking. But I think this is kind of the beauty of their business, which is the growth seems to have been much more organic than Fortnite, right? Fortnite threw around a lot of big name muscle, influencer muscle, big brand muscle, big dollar muscle, right? To sort of generate a lot of the hype that they did. Roblox, I feel like, just from an investment standpoint, from a company standpoint, feels like most of the growth was so organic that it seems like a more viable business long term. And when you think that all of these developers came on the platform, there's no Star Wars in there's no NFL in there, right? But they're generating serious revenue dollars, and the developers are making serious money, obviously, because they keep coming back, and the developer community on Roblox is growing. That I feel like Roblox, again, seems to have achieved what Fortnite could have, but didn't.
Yeah, the Fortnite thing is a little like, I think in many ways we were prophesizing a year ago how we thought Fortnite was going to transition to this platform. We really were.
Yeah.
And I was convinced they were going to do it. Convinced. And it is weird that Roblox is the one to sort of have done it. Like Fortnite doing concerts, they're still just doing concerts. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
and
mean?
how
Like,
much of their legal issues you think play into this? Where, again, kind of, and this is classic stupid management decision, right? There's this allure of a lawsuit. Maybe you can make some money. Maybe you get a bit greedy, and then you lose sight of your business, right? Which clearly I think they have when you
right.
compare to what Roblox and the progress they've made, at least.
Look, I don't want to be seen as criticizing Fortnite because they're still a phenomenal success that's beyond words by pretty much any standard. But it certainly is true that I suspect that some things like the platform battle with, you know, Apple and Google is taking place now. Like it distracts management. It's a big risk item. It has to be managed. It takes up time, resources, reporting, messaging. And the reality is, and again, I know this from the book of esports, like looking back, you can trace how a distracted boardroom misses, like is a consistent story in missed opportunities in gaming. The biggest example that is Activision Blizzard missing the MOBA genre because the boardroom was busy with other things like the Vivendi Universal merger or the Vivendi merger,
Yep.
right? Like it's simple and it makes sense because as a human, like you can only have 2 or 3 top priorities, you know what I mean? And it is, for better or for worse, it's a that's an important item. Fortnite has to manage it. Epic has to manage it. That's going to be top 3 on the daily briefing list every day. So I think that's part of it. But I also think it's, you know, in some sense it's harder to start a two-sided market. And Roblox began by solving the two-sided market problem, right?
Yep.
So in some sense, even though Roblox was coming from behind on a per user perspective basis, right? Like they had chosen to tackle the harder part of the hill first, right? They
Yep.
had chosen to get a marketplace working. And as somebody who built a marketplace business, I can tell you they are so hard to get started until one day they just start working. Like they literally do not work until one day they work. And they look so easy from the outside. You're like, oh, it's easy. You just get people who want to sell A and people who want to buy A, and you tell them to come here. And every two-sided market struggles with a massive imbalance on one side of the market, and it is fatal. You
Yep.
always have people who want to show up, and I guarantee Roblox was people wanted to play games, nobody wanted to make them. And they tackled that harder piece of the problem. They got a rich creator program, economic rewards, incentives. And so in some sense, I actually think they have a leg up on Fortnite now, if Fortnite still wants to go that platform marketplace model, because these guys have a two-sided market that's working. And that's
Agreed.
really hard to do.
Can I talk to you about the most surprising thing from the S1? Maybe not the most, one of the most surprising things. They put
Sure.
one page on their users. Like I thought this would be a much bigger part of the S1, to be honest.
Yep.
But they literally put one graph on here's what our users look like. And I'm going to put it up here. It might be too small for anyone to see. But the age group is what surprised me. Because if you look, the under 9 category is only 25%. 9 to 12 is another 29%. So between 9 and 12, between 0 and 12, essentially you have a little more than 50% of your users, right?
Yep.
But older than that, like that's kind of split 50-50 essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything under 12 is 50%, everything over 12 is 50%, and you have a 25 plus base that's 14% of your user base. This, to me, this skewed older as a percentage than what I thought, just sort of anecdotally or intuitively.
But I would probably argue that how that platform is being used is very different. I would argue that your 20 plus demo is more the creators, right? They're the people who are in Roblox as a toolkit, right? And your 9 to 12 are the players, right? They're the people who are using Roblox as a gaming experience. I mean, again, I'm being more critical for Roblox a game. Like, you can have fun playing Roblox. I have definitely played Roblox mods now that I've been like, or games that I've been like, oh, that's pretty cool. Look, beat me up all you want. I've yet to play the Roblox game where I've been like, oh, this is it. This is what I'm going to do for the next 6 years of my life. You know what I mean? But I also think that's part of the magic of Roblox is, and this is actually a plus in there. Before I thought this was a weakness, right? Because I was like, well, they don't have like where is the next, League of Legends being made in Roblox, right? But as I thought about it more, I kind of realized, okay, but let's say they did have a killer app in it, such that 80% of Roblox users just play that experience. Then they're a game company. They've
Yeah.
killed their two-sided market. They actually want disposable, quick, repeatable experiences that are fun for novelty and quick engagement and quick solve that last you 6 to 10 hours, because they want you to be churning through that marketplace and experiencing new content. And so it's actually like sort of what I had thought of, well, where is the killer app for Roblox? Is the answer is they're all the killer apps. That's the point, you know?
I'm curious though, are you surprised that it's 50-50 male female?
Not at all. Not at all. I really think that particularly gaming is just, it skews dual gender right now, and particularly when half your users are so young. Everybody under 10 games, girls and boys. Like it's ubiquitous. It's an entertainment medium, and it's like, yes, it still skews more heavily male, older up, but even those demos are like 70-30. You know, the trend is very much towards everybody loves games and plays them. It doesn't surprise me that one of the more younger skewing games is more balanced in that trend.
But that's an encouraging trend for the future then, right?
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
As we get much more sort of equality in younger gamers then.
It's
because they
the
grow up to
best-
be gamers, right? That to me is a very encouraging metric. What I think is interesting though about the language in the S1 is they really see their audience, their user base, as very varied in age, very varied in geography, very varied in gender, you know, like really not as homogeneous as maybe people might think immediately when you think of Roblox.
That was actually what I think my takeaway looking at those graphs in the S1 filing was, this is just everyone. Like, it's pretty evenly balanced by gender. It's pretty evenly balanced by geography and country. They're trying to make it look pretty evenly balanced by age. They've cut those pies so it's roughly 25% in each segment. You know what I mean? Like, what the argument they're trying to make is, this is a product for everyone. It's not like we're limited to North American male gamers or, you know, South American female, you know, college students, right? Like, it's literally like they're basically saying everybody enjoys this platform. And that's huge when you want to raise $1 billion in the IPO, because I guarantee you what is one of the big things they want to use that money for: user acquisition. That's got to be the vast bulk of their spend, particularly with the margins they have. They're crazy, right? So if you want to argue we're going to be the biggest business, you need to use our eligible user base as the entire world. That's sort of what they're trying to show with that graph in my mind, that ultimately everybody can fall in love with Roblox. We're a brand like Star Wars, not a brand like Sesame Street. Or maybe Sesame Street is a bad example, not a brand like, I don't know, what's a kid show that not a brand like Zoom. I don't know, Zoom. I'm thinking of the old kid show, not the teleconference thing.
No one's going to get that reference.
Did you get it?
In this day and age, no, not even me.
Did you get Zoom? Zoom was the greatest PBS show when I was a kid. Anyway.
No, anyways,
I sound so old. I'm like, when I was a kid, Zoom was a PBS TV show.
I watched Sesame Street. I was a Sesame Street kid.
Yeah, you and everybody. Yeah. All right, this is a good one. This is a great one. I like this.
Can we just there's one more piece of the Roblox puzzle, which is China. Okay. And this was another article. This was from TechCrunch, the promise and challenge of Roblox's future in China. And you know, the crux of it is they talk about how, and again, this piece I didn't know, I saw it in the S1 as well, but in 2019, Roblox essentially created a joint venture with Tencent, or a subsidiary of Tencent, for Roblox in China, where essentially Tencent owns 49% of the joint venture, Roblox owns 51%, and basically they intend to publish a localized and operate a localized version of Roblox. What's your view on sort of how successful it might be in a market like China?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just have to add the obvious, like, Tencent, where are you not? Like,
but this is the beauty of a communist government that requires basically all foreign companies to have a local partner, basically.
They're in everything good. They're in everything good. Anyway, I'm just like, they're like the greatest. But, you know, I think it could be hugely successful, because I think Roblox has figured out a formula that's difficult to figure out, right? I think many of the elements of Roblox gameplay, I would argue, would make it better suited to Asian markets, right? Like I think, and I think fundamentally, like they have the right partner to do distribution and growth in the space, and they have a partner that invests for success. So if you've solved a marketplace, I think of this as like franchising, right? These guys have solved a game creator marketplace model in a pretty interesting way, right? They are now franchising it down the street to China, right? And they have a franchise operator in Tencent who knows what they're doing with a proven track record of success. I think you'd be foolish not to bet on this. They have a blueprint and they have an executional team. They're all set to go.
It begs sort of the bigger question too of, it seems Tencent and call it the Chinese market in general can't seem to agree on the path forward with these kinds of partnerships. In other words, they either force you to partner with them, right? And Tencent takes a big chunk, or they knock you off, right? They create some Chinese version that is similar enough, right?
Yeah, that is the trade-off. That
Like, I don't know if you have an opinion on sort of why this versus that, or why the partnership here versus leveraging their massive sort of development muscle at Tencent to go and just create a similar platform.
Well, again, I don't want to go into any of the politics of, entering China or what's going, but I think fundamentally it's because this isn't a development puzzle. It's a two-sided market puzzle. It's
True.
Really hard. And then the other thing is, think how much pre-stocked two-sided market content they come with into the partnership.
Also
right?
true.
Like,
yep.
If the biggest challenge you have in starting these business models is the supply side, which I believe is true, like these guys come with all the gas. They're ready to go. They have more levels and gameplay types to get you out of the gate than you know what to do with. So how do you how many dev teams do you need to have 10,000? This type of stuff is really hard to clone. It's really hard to clone. So I do think this is again, this is why. And if you look at, like, I think the name for their joint venture, it's Roblox platform. It's not Roblox game, right? If it were a game, they could be copied and cloned. As a platform, it is a much more difficult problem. This is like sort of like asking, why doesn't Tencent just make their own version of Unreal? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they could, but it's a much harder problem to solve. Actually, it's interesting. Maybe Tencent should think about that, but for different reasons. But I think that's the beauty of, again, what they built is, and I kept making this mistake. I kept on evaluating them as a game or a suite of games, and they're not. They're a platform-driven marketplace. You need to look at them more like a Steam,
William, before we move on, I want to move on to another story. But before we do, I just want to say a quick word. For those of you who follow me, everyone knows I've talked a lot about esports betting in the past. I've not been a big fan of the space because of the sort of the shadiness of some of the characters there and the reputational risk involved. But esports betting is literally the single fastest growing area of esports. Now, all of this was true until now. Recently, bought stock in a company called Esports Entertainment Group. We also had the CEO of the company on the podcast. This is a company, they're a public company, NASDAQ listed, fully regulated, really focused on building esports betting and entertainment assets. So if you're looking to make a bet in the space, if you're looking to bet on esports as an investor, even as a small retail investor, like meaning you just want to put a couple $100 here or there and buy a stock and have sort of a hand in the esports market, or if you're a family office or institutional investor of any kind, I highly recommend checking them out. Esports Entertainment Group. The ticker symbol is GAMBLE, GMBL. They have an awesome strategy where they are basically attacking the space from a play, watch, and bet standpoint. Having said all that, the disclaimer here, I need to make sure to state it's only my opinion. I'm not an investment advisor. I'm not selling stock. So do your own research and get advice from a licensed professional if you're looking to invest. William, let's talk about something near and dear to your heart here.
Oh
really,
my gosh.
this one like hits home, I feel like.
Do I get
it's maybe
Heroes of the
it's maybe
Storm?
too close. No, it's closer than Heroes. This is almost like private. Whereas like I feel like your fans don't know this about you.
Okay. What is this topic? What?
And you wouldn't know it from the topic, but the headline here was from CNBC. Chinese streaming and mobile gaming company releases rap video with quarterly
this
results.
is a good one. Yeah.
So the key points here: Chinese video and gaming app Bilibili released a rap music video alongside its quarterly earnings report on Thursday. The Tencent-backed app is popular among Chinese young people and reported a 74% year-on-year increase in net revenue.
Again, these numbers
Huge.
in gaming are just insane.
Huge,
Insane.
right? Almost
Yeah.
$500 million revenue just for the quarter. And it says, however, monetization remains a challenge for Bilibili and far larger competitors in China's video streaming industry, such as iQIYI. I will say the beauty of this article, William, first of all, is that if this esports thing doesn't work out for you, which it obviously has, but pretend it hasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
You have a second career potential here as an investor relations person who can rap, right? I feel like
true.
this is a unique niche that you bring to the table.
For the listeners, I keep trying to get Paul to let me record a rap theme song for Business of Esports. He's banned it thus far, but maybe one day I'll get to bring my rhyme skills to the fore. But no, like this is, I mean, again, there's a couple things here, but I just, for me, it's first of all, again, just the insane growth in numbers. Bilibili clearly coming out of the gate on that League of Legends acquisition, and driving insane, growth and perspective. It's very impressive. That's one. Two is this notion of the celebration, right? Like they're so pleased with their, like, for this, it could have been anything, right? It could have been like launched a cannon full of, gold bars. It could have been, like parachuted off a skyscraper while shouting their name. All executives got Bilibili face tattoos. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that these guys are celebrating that I think is really important, because you don't do anything like a rap video for your performance unless you are darn sure you nailed that performance. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like, but you're so right. It's indication, I think, of peak hype really at this point. Like that we are so excited about the growth, the dollars in this industry, that now the quarterly earnings reports, which is usually the CEO who gets on with the analysts, gives the story, some of the numbers, thank you very much, and goes away. All of a sudden now this is a show. Like, the business side has become a show.
You know what it's like? It's like the Apple product unveils, the iPhone product unveils.
It's true.
That's what this sort of reminds me of, which is like, that whole thing is investor messaging. They're basically saying you should buy more stock in us this year because look how great it's going to be. But it's turned into this theatrical pantomime, right? And it's kind of what's happening here to some extent, which I think is interesting. And I actually candidly sort of hope more companies adopt this around strong quarterly earnings results, because it makes them way more interesting to discuss than just the numbers. But I also think, again, I think what is more important from a business perspective in this is the fact that Bilibili felt so strongly about their success that they knew they were getting the A+, they did this. And to me, that also says they're confident about the future, right? That they know this wasn't an anomalous quarter where things spiked because of global situations or whatever, that they actually think they are positioned to succeed, not now, but over at least the near to midterm. And I think that's really, really important to realize as we think about a streaming war heating up in China. I think previously we described it as, oh, Bilibili, who are these guys then? Oh, they got League of Legends, they're trying to be something. I think you have to read this as there is now a real battlefield that's going to take place for the hearts and minds of, Chinese streaming service fans and viewers, right?
But isn't this crazy, though, that like when we talked about Bilibili buying the rights for League, we thought that was a big number, right? Yep. But when you look at the growth, just their year-on-year growth, like expand that out to 4 full quarters as opposed to 1 quarter, like they've basically paid for their League rights, their 3 years of League rights this year, just on the growth. Right?
It goes back to the other piece of how underpriced the League. And by the way, I'm not sure, did they broadcast League this year, or was it for next year, their League rights acquisition? I can't I can't remember.
Good
But
question. I'm not sure.
I,
I think
I
that
I'm,
no. I think it. I think it was. I think it was on.
I want to
Maybe
double
I'm.
check. That's actually important. I can't
Yeah.
remember. I do sort of think it was for this calendar year too. But either way, the point is like it goes back to the growth these guys are experiencing is, and I know it says they have monetization issues, which we'll get to in a second, but like the growth that is being charted here, it does justify spending ridiculous amounts to acquire properties. And it does mean that something like League was undervalued in the purchase chain, right? It does, right? If you can, like, so I feel quite strongly that I'm going to call this pretty, like, this is the last time we see a major esports sell rights for under 250 million. I
Yeah,
really
but
believe that.
like for every Bilibili League story, you have
Yeah.
a YouTube Overwatch League, Call of Duty League story, right? Where they overpay, they bungle it, they have no clue what they're doing,
That,
right?
that,
Like it's part of it is the execution, part of it is the
yeah.
property itself. Like there's a lot of factors. It's not just like any esports media rights are all of a sudden 10 times more
But
valuable,
yeah,
right? Like
I'm overstating, but I think the good ones. This is the last time you're gonna see, you know, a marquee, call it a top 5 esport, right, go for below a quarter billion. Like
and
these
this
are gonna start to
yeah.
go at you know, mainline sports prices because the value is actually there.
And this may have an impact on the pricing of what we talked about last week, which were the English streaming rights for League, right? Like
Yeah,
when if you can point to success like this, assuming Bilibili did stream League this year, which I'm not sure, that that may have a material impact on the going rate.
Oh, 100%. Like 100%. You know what I mean? Like, I I think that I was wrong, you know, a podcast ago when I was, you know, I was doing some back of the envelope math about pricing and structure and everything, and I these Billy numbers totally changed that for me. And yeah, I actually am double checking here. They had I believe they had the rights for 2020 in this, so
Yeah,
this was
it would
locked
make
in for
sense,
them.
right?
Yeah. This is inclusive of the 2020 rights. Yeah, I wanted to make sure, but I do think it is in there, and I confirmed it.
On that note, William, that wraps up this week's podcast.
Oh no, I love
I
this
know.
podcast. Is that
I
it
know.
was over too fast?
I feel like like we got 3 meaty topics in though, right? And for people who want more, right? There's a lot of ways they can get more, and I'll tell you how.
How, Paul? How?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking, William.
Tell me, how do I have more of this?
We should just start doing bad theater like this every podcast.
We should be like, and what's that web link to the web? Like, tell me again, Paul, so I can favorite it in my browser.
Every Wednesday night after we tape this podcast, in other words, like in the next few hours, as of the taping of this podcast, we do a live stream, an after show live stream, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday night, where we cover all the stuff that didn't make it into the podcast. And usually it's a lot of fun. It's very interactive. We welcome everyone to bring their ideas, their thoughts, their opinions, their love, their hate, whatever you want to bring to the table. We accept it. It's a lot of fun. Wednesday evenings at 8:30 p.m. We also do an Esports Minute, which I cover sort of the 3 topics of the week that you really need to know about, and it all takes about a couple of minutes. We do a weekly news roundup at the Business of Esports, where you can get all your news digest once a week. You don't need to go to every site, Esports Insider, Esports Observer, all these other sites. You come to us, you get your digest all in one spot. And so many other ways, which you guys will see soon, that we're coming up with to give you more and more business esports content. Now, if you haven't already, the ultimate business esports content is the Book of Esports. You got to go buy it on Amazon. It's still available, William. It's still in stock.
Still in stock, but supplies are, I mean, it's the perfect holiday gift. Supplies are dwindling fast. And honestly, like, guys, seriously, like, it is, if you have been on the fence about this, if you've been holding back, this is a great time to read it. I promise it's fun, it's enjoyable, and you'll go into next year with a big dose of insight about the space and the structure of it. And again, I wrote it to be written, you know, readable in a couple sittings. This isn't a book that you're going to have to spend 60 hours poring over. And, you know, we're if you want more of at least my voice, there's an audiobook where I narrate the thing. So if you decide that the best part of this podcast is Team Professor and you would like to enjoy your holidays with a festive voice, 6-hour monologue from yours truly, that is a wonderful thing and I fully endorse it. So check it out.
Think about it. Thanksgiving dinner. You've got the family over. The turkey's out. Don't put the Christmas music on. Put on William narrating the book of esports, right? It's the best kind of background. You're absorbing knowledge while you're eating turkey.
Well, it's the opposite. Maybe a lot of people aren't traveling, aren't able to do things with family this year because of the situation we're in, and maybe they're looking for, I don't know, there's something to, put a different spin on the holiday. You could try listening to an audiobook and see if that lifts it up. I don't know. It's a great book. Check it out.
I will leave you guys with one more reminder. Please leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. It really helps us out, gets people finding the podcast. It helps us with all the sort of behind the scenes algorithms. But more importantly, just tell your friends. If you love the business of esports, if you love the content we make here, telling your friends is really the absolute nicest thing you can do for us and the absolute best thing you can do for us. As always, we really appreciate it, guys. Don't forget, tune in for the after show, and we will see you guys next week.